Before I start the video, I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreons who have been supporting my channel. If you would like to check out my Patreon and receive early access to some very exciting videos coming soon, then please click the link in the description below. Hello there, and welcome to the third episode of Just a Nerd podcast. And today I am joined by a very special guest. And if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tharries. I make Doctor Who YouTube videos, and that's about it, really. That's about the extent of it. Yeah,
Yeah, so welcome, Tharries. Welcome to Just a Nerd podcast, where we talk
thank
all
you.
things Doctor Who. We talk about obviously your involvement with the fandom, your history with being a fan, and just kind of shining a light on you. So, yeah, to start off with, please tell us about your history with the show, such as when you became a fan.
Yeah, so mine's an interesting one. I was thinking about this the other day actually. My very first story was actually The Next Doctor in 2008, which is an odd starting point because it's got a
Uh,
lot of like stuff to do with like the lore and the Fob Watch and all that sort of stuff. And obviously it's a Cyberman story as well. The basic extent of it was my family weren't ever into Doctor Who, like growing up. It just
yeah,
wasn't a thing for any of them really. But I remember, I think it was Christmas 2008. My dad saw it was on and was like, "You might like that," It's and yeah, I've never looked back since. But I rewatched it the other day, and to be fair, it does act as a decent introduction to a few things. Like you kind of get to learn about the Doctor's history through like the eyes of Jackson Lake, who's very much someone who has his memory filled in about that very thing throughout the story. So I could see why I liked it as a kid.
yeah. To be honest, that is a very good point that you make because you also get introduced to the concept of regeneration in a bit of a weird
Mhm.
way, but
Yeah,
it also sets things up for obviously from your perspective. Obviously, you watch that Christmas 2008, and then a year later,
yep,
you
yeah,
actually got the real thing, the real regeneration. Which
yes, yeah.
what was your feelings then when David left? Because you weren't watching it for that long
Yeah.
before.
Like, obviously, I bought some DVDs after the fact.
Yeah.
I specifically have this very fond memory of getting the Rose End of the World CD and not realizing that there was two episodes on it. And after I discovered that fact, after we'd had some like lunch as a kid and stuff, I was excited as anything to see what another episode. That's great. But like, yeah, obviously, like you say, I hadn't really like grown up with Ten as much as some people had. I'd watched some of his stuff through DVDs and things, but yeah. So I would argue that Matt for me was more of my like. I remember David leaving. I remember the big hysteria over it. Everyone being
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, he's going!" Like, "Oh my god." But like, I've always considered Matt to be like my childhood doctor. Like, I
Yeah.
more so remember him joining than having any strong feelings to Matt leaving, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course. Yeah, I mean that's kind of similar to me because I started watching it, well, not um all in one go. Like I remember watching Rose when it first aired. I was 4 then,
mhm.
and then I
Yeah,
properly started tuning in after Eccleston regenerated. And obviously, yeah, Eccleston being my first Doctor, and I know he's only on for one series, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
got attached to Tennant, and then seeing him go, which I imagine you probably felt when Matt left, you losing your
yeah,
first Doctor. It's
yeah.
it's a weird one because I know people that I used to go to school with who again grew up with Tennant. Once Matt was announced, people were like, yeah, I don't want to watch that anymore.
No,
I don't
yeah.
know if you felt like you were debating that or anything, or
Um, I think as a kid, I mean, it's funny because I always remember like early Smith era as the show being quite popular still, like
yeah,
series five was still quite big. But I specifically remember like as the Smith years wore on, maybe sans like 2013 with the 50th and that, which is kind of its own separate thing.
yeah,
I do remember more and more of my friends not saying, "Oh, I stopped watching when Tenet left," but more so just dropping off of it slowly. Like I have this memory of one of my friends, like you remember he used to do those things in school where it was like you'd bring a toy in for the day or something like that, and
Yeah.
you'd like dress up for the day or something. I remember like one time, like one of my friends at the time in like primary school brought in a sonic screwdriver one year, and then the next year he did not care for Doctor Who. He moved on to I think wrestling at the time, and I
Oh,
just
bit of a
it's
transition.
yeah, it was a completely different thing. But I think yeah, you did sort of start to see as the Smith years kind of wore along, and then Capaldi came along, kind of this slow sort of deterioration in the people around me watching it, I guess, which is kind of sad, but I suppose as part of growing up in a sense, people find different things.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, as you get older, sometimes your interests change. But I think one thing I like about Doctor Who fans, especially long-term Doctor Who fans, we go through
Mm.
change a lot. Like every three
Yeah,
to four
yeah,
years, we get a new Doctor. And obviously,
yeah,
when we look back on certain eras, like I imagine for you with the Matt Smith era, you imagine a
yeah.
lot of your childhood growing up. Um, do you feel that with the whole regeneration thing, and do you feel like if you were given the opportunity to maybe change history a little bit, would you
Mm.
have at least one more series with Matt Smith to kind of just feel that a little bit more of nostalgia, or would you leave it as how it was?
It's interesting. I think I would, but not only because I like that Doctor. Obviously, that's the reason. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong, but it's also the fact that Matt himself has kind of said since he didn't feel fully like done in hindsight. He didn't feel fully like he'd completed where he wanted to go, and obviously with a lot of the initial plans for Series 8 were Matt going darker instead of Capaldi being the darker introduction,
yeah,
which it ended up being. So I would have liked to have seen Matt play that. I would have liked to have seen Matt play that. I'd have liked to have seen some of the translaw stuff kind of carried out a bit longer than it was, rather than just the one episode. I'd have liked to have seen that Doctor and Clara's dynamic kind of become a bit more tangible, because I do think they have good chemistry. I think it's just a lot of focus on the Impossible Girl stuff.
yeah.
So I think if you give it one more series to bed those two in, I think you'd have a really strong dynamic. So yeah, I think I would personally, but I do love Peter as well, so it's difficult. You know.
No, that's a fair enough observation. And yeah, the whole mention there of like the whole dynamic with Clara. And again, it
Mm.
may have served the whole impossible girl storyline better.
Yeah,
We would have had a more satisfying conclusion rather it just being wrapped up suddenly, and then we got the
yeah,
50th, and then it's never picked up again.
yeah,
So yeah, it would have certainly made things a lot better. But again, I share that with you that I'm happy that we got Peter Capaldi when we did, and
yeah.
no, the whole series was good. But regardless of what happened, you obviously stayed a fan, and that led to you creating a certain YouTube channel, which is
It did.
obviously, yeah,
Yes.
what we're going to also be talking about today. But tell me, when did you first make this YouTube channel?
Well, the account has existed since like 2013, but I don't think
Okay.
I ever actually uploaded something until. Ooh, I mean, the first thing I ever uploaded was not. I mean, the channel's name originally was Spider-Man. Originally,
Spider-Man.
I don't think I've ever like Spider and Batman. Like I combined the two. It was like Spider-Bat. I was like,
Okay.
that's just because those are the two things I liked at the time. It wasn't good. It wasn't a good username at all. Um, the very first thing I uploaded was like, I don't think I've ever said this. Maybe like on a podcast before, so you've got a little exclusive here. Like,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. It was like a GTA 4 mod showcase of the Spider-Man mod.
okay.
Um, GTA 4 of all things. And I remember that got about like 1,000 views, and I was blown away by that. Even because, especially, back then, like the channel had no subscribers or anything. But my dad was kind of like, because at this time I was probably like 12 or something, probably, yeah, maybe wait a couple of years, which is probably justified because it probably wasn't good. It probably wasn't a good video. So yeah, that happened. But then in terms of actual Tharries, which people know now, that started, I think the first video that's now deleted along with a lot of the others was like December 2018.
Yeah.
And basically I started the channel just because Series 11 was coming out. I was talking to a lot of people around me about it. but I felt I needed somewhere to express my opinions about it, vent my opinions about it.
Yeah.
So I was like, screw it, I'll start a channel. And it's actually very funny. I've said this a few times. The way I started making videos initially and why they're all deleted at this point was I literally got my phone, paused at one of the Doctor Who videos at a point which I thought looked all right. Then I got the screen recorder app, which would record the microphone and the screen of the video, and that would be how I made videos initially.
Oh
And then
wow.
it just, yeah, and then it just sort of expanded from there. I think I went through a phase of it being like done through PowerPoint, a lot of
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint stuff. Yeah,
It's creative. I'll give you that.
yeah, and then just slowly learn how to actually edit things from there. It's just sort of, I just sort of learned as I went, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, again, it certainly seems like you've come a long way, from PowerPoint.
I hope
Um,
so. I hope so. I hope so. Yeah.
but yeah, that's a bit of an interesting time. So you started your YouTube channel around Series 11
Yeah.
airing, which was probably a little bit unfortunate because shortly after you had a gap year.
Mm.
So what content did you make in the meantime? Was it just Doctor Who, or did you do any more mod showcases or?
Yeah, no, I think it was just Doctor Who at that point. The first thing that's actually up on the channel now is I think it's a video called like Defending the Eighth Doctor. Don't go back and watch it. I sound super nasally and it's like it's not really well edited and all of this because I remember a lot of people sort of saying, I don't even know what the main crux of that video was. I think it was essentially he's good in the TV movie, guys, not just Big Finish. I think probably something like that. And yeah, I sort of carried on from there. I remember covering a few things. Like there was like news, like oh look, we've got this one grainy picture of the Cybermen. If you zoom in really, do you remember that? There's
Yeah,
like that
I remember
one
that.
picture of the Cybermen, and the Daleks on Clifton Suspension Bridge with
Yeah.
the new what they called the
Oh,
what
the
they called the
reconnaissance drone
yeah,
ones.
the reconnaissance drone Dalek, and we're like, oh, Dalek Civil War, which it kind of was in the
Yeah.
end. Um, yeah, so just kind of it grew from there. But I would say, really, I mean, 2020 was when I had the biggest like change. If you go back far enough in my channel, you'll probably find like some commentary type videos. I went through a phase of being a commentary channel. I did like 3 videos on like Jake Paul. I don't
Oh,
even remember what now. I don't remember. I think it was something to do with like he was like looting shops. I don't remember. I don't
oh,
remember.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like I remember what you were on about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and back then as well, I had my first ever webcam, which looked dreadful, and I was in my old room. Yeah, but I would say really the genesis of, I suppose, what people consider Tharries now would probably be, I'd say, like April 2021, which was when I had no idea what to do with the channel, which was kind of a theme because, like, you
Yeah.
can sort of notice, I'm going back and forth. But I stumbled across, I just went onto Reddit quite
Oh,
randomly,
here we
and then
go.
yeah, and I saw that very first Reddit leak, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. This is fun. This will be fun to read just as a one-off thing. That video ended up getting about 16,000 views, which was mental for me at the time. It still
Yeah.
is really, really good now. I was like, well, people like this. And I just I carried on doing it for a bit. And then, yeah, sort of just added things, started doing news and started doing like theory stuff. And it all just, and then obviously Series 13 eventually came out and it just carried on, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I remember obviously very well about the leaks. I used to
Yes,
cover them
yeah,
myself, and they were wild. They
they
were
were.
wild. I don't even think a single one of them ended up being remotely true.
No, very few. The thing is, the thing that kind of justified it at the time was obviously a lot of Series 12 leaked that way. Because you
Yeah,
had the Timeless Child, that whole storyline basically leaked online before it happened, on Reddit specifically, and all the stuff about like I think the Lone Cyberman as well, and a few other bits and bobs, all leaked about Series 12. So with Series 13, because as well, and this is the like key bit of context, we knew nothing about it at
yeah,
all, but like months and months on end. So I think there was this kind of thirst for information about the series which none of us had, which I think was what sort of drove that just rampant speculation and rampant like theorizing and rampant like leaks of just
Yeah.
this is just crazy. There was all sorts of stuff. I remember like it's funny. I remember like there being a leak about like Donna coming back, which is
Oh
kind of
yes.
ironic now in retrospect, and one about the toy maker as well, which is kind of funny the way
Again.
these things work out. But yeah, yeah. Series 13 leaks were mental, like because there was just such a gap, like a vacuum of content.
Yeah.
Fans just filled it with the most insane speculation. But it made for a fun time. Obviously, nowadays we actually get information, so there's not as much of a call for it.
Yeah.
Um,
True. I mean, I
uh,
looked back on the subreddits the other day, just out of chance to see how they were
yeah,
doing because I haven't looked at them in a while, and they are quiet. There's nothing,
yeah,
and
no,
it's a shame because as much as like yeah, we don't need them now, but it's just
yeah,
like looking back, you know, I do hold a little bit of nostalgia for a period where we
yeah,
weren't getting nothing, and then we were getting leaks of like stuff like Ancient Gallifrey being featured in
yes. I
Series
remember Ancient
13.
Gallifrey. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I feel like these leaks, well, leaks and the whole theories and stuff, they all
yeah.
span from where we were left because Series 12 ended with the whole timeless child thing, which
Mm,
is very lore heavy. And then people were just thinking, oh yeah, Ancient Gallifrey, that makes sense. We're gonna see Omega, we're gonna see
yeah,
Rassilon and
yeah,
stuff. And
yeah.
then what we ended up getting was the complete opposite. But
Yep. No, absolutely. It's kind of mad in retrospect. Like I remember seeing so many theories that I thought that would be cool. Like obviously the whole thing, people were talking about what if, Rassilon came back after he was banished in Hellbent and you had this whole thing where he finally enacts his revenge. We didn't get anything close to that. But you could sort of see where the ideas came from. You could see where there is a lot of creativity at the time. And I think, a lot of people back then kind of looked at those videos and went, well, it's clickbait and that. To an extent, I'm not going to lie, they
yeah,
were. Let's not kid ourselves.
nah,
But
of
I think
course,
the way I've always sort of seen it is like they were fun to read,
yeah,
even if they were true. And quite often, the point of them was to kind of look at them and say like, oh, this is stupid. But then other times, occasionally, not often with Series 13, but occasionally they would get the odd thing right. But these days, like I tend to gravitate more towards theories because obviously they're basically the same thing, but you don't
yeah,
have the preface of it being this is insider information, guys. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Definitely,
yeah,
100%. But and obviously as well, I think they're trying to be a lot more kind of what do you call it, like strict on like leaks in general, which
mm.
makes complete sense. I find it really funny how everyone sort of said, oh, the Chibnall era was so good at keeping things secret when like I swear there was more leaks surrounding things like the Centenary and Series 12 than we've probably had for like Russell at this point. I know we've
yeah.
had a
I
few things.
I do
But,
feel like that's the case because I remember Captain Jack's return was leaked
mm,
pretty much.
Sasha as
Um,
the master as well. I remember that
yeah.
leaking beforehand. I didn't believe that either. I was like, nah, I don't think that's
Oh,
real.
neither did I.
I was like, oh yeah, no, it is.
Because like I remember seeing again, I think that originated from Reddit as well.
Yeah,
And then because I just thought, and I got the impression that Chris Chibnall, especially with Series 11, where it was literally completely new ideas, I was like, is he really just going to rush and bring back the Master, especially after what happened with Missy? And then
mm,
I was surprised. Okay.
yeah,
And then obviously, yeah, the other stuff that leaked, the Timeless Child thing that you mentioned earlier, and then the Centenary, classic Doctors returning, and then the big one, David Tennant as well,
yeah, and
returning, and the
Ace
whole
and Tegan
crypto.
as well. I think leaked as well. So yeah, like it's kind. And I remember as well, like even like Legend of the Sea Devils, there was a leaked picture of the pirate ship, like
Yeah.
behind the scenes, which I actually uploaded in the day back in the day and got taken down.
Oh,
Yeah. Now these days I'm a lot more careful about that stuff, but back then I was like, well, there's nothing else to talk about.
yeah,
Um, like the last year or so, I've been a lot more careful and stuff because obviously you don't want to, compromise anyone or compromise the show in any way. At the end of the day, I think as long as you're doing it in good fun and you're not like compromising anything, I think that's all good. But yeah, like generally I'll stick to theories these days because it's like, you don't risk sort of tripping on anyone's toes with that. But it was a fun time just seeing the wild, wild west of what's going to come out today. What are people saying today?
Yeah.
You didn't even have to like plan a video, which sounds like mad, but you just went onto Reddit and you're like, oh my god, there's just so much insane stuff here.
Yeah, I know. Like
It
there was
was
times where you were getting like 3 or 4 posts a day, and
yeah.
it was bloody crazy. But let's go back to your channel. So you feel like
Mm,
that from that first leak video, and then you were doing more. Do you feel like that
mm.
was like the jumping off point for your channel? Was that what
I
pushed
think
it
so,
to?
yeah, because before then I had about 3,000 subscribers and I had
Yeah,
like some modest, like some things that did decent views, but nothing that really got my foot in the door as like, one of the main ones that you'd go to for like the, sort of news and the leaks and, whatever else.
yeah,
But that was really the thing where I was like, oh, this is actually going quite well now. And then obviously, as like Flux came out and those videos all did really well. Um, and then you had like, I think just 2021 is where I see, even though the channel existed long before that,
yeah,
2021 is where I would say the channel really kind of came into its own. And I think I've tried to, in the years that, like obviously 2022 and then 2023, expand upon a lot of the stuff that I did in that like sort of first year. That like I've been a lot more experimental with content than I was before. Lots of things like cosplays and Comic Cons and I don't even know, like sort of theory videos and reading things like the Star Beast comics and kind of doing a video about that and doing a video about like Dark Dimension and all this sort of stuff. Like I've just tried to like expand it sort of beyond where I started from, really. But one of the key things is I've been a lot more of an on-camera presence
yeah,
sort of since those initial leaks. The initial leaks were you'd have like the Reddit page on the screen, you'd take a
yeah,
screenshot of it, and then you'd have like a vortex background, and that was your video, and there wasn't a particular reason why I didn't show my face. I think mainly just because like couldn't afford a webcam for the
mm,
longest time, and eventually, now I've got like a decent one and everything. But I do prefer having that on-screen kind
yeah,
of relationship. I think I sound more natural. You go back and watch even some of those videos from 2021, and I think I do sound a bit not robotic, wrong word, probably a bit I don't even know what the right word is, kind of like sort of stagnant, a little bit
yeah,
like sort of just slow and kind of monotonous. And like I feel a bit more natural speaking like this to you now than I
yeah,
do just speaking to a microphone. I mean, sometimes I'll just speak to a microphone, but even when I'm doing that, I'll kind of do the hand gestures at this point.
yeah,
Just it feels more natural. Like when I did a sonic screwdriver ranking video recently, and that was mostly microphone only, sans like the intro and like the outro. But even then, as I was explaining all the screwdrivers, I was explaining them as if you could see how I was explaining what they will look like. So yeah, but yeah.
Oh well, that's really cool to learn. Do you feel like because you mentioned as well, like once you started doing the camera stuff, you found it easier to essentially like perform your content.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's made you more confident as a person? Because like you mentioned as well, you've done conventions, you've also started your own podcast as well, and you've
Mm.
done cosplaying and stuff. Yeah. Do you feel like that's had an impact on you personally?
100%. Yeah, I think like I've never been camera shy particularly before YouTube really was a thing. I've always just I've always just been quite chatty and quite loud. So I think I kind of gravitate well towards this kind of thing. But I definitely think I feel a lot less self-conscious about how I look than I
Yeah.
did when I was younger. That was a big kind of fear for me growing up, or like a big sort of source of insecurity for me growing up was like, how are people going to judge my physical appearance? Now I don't really care. Now I don't really care. Now I'm not bothered. But it definitely has helped in that aspect.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, like on-screen confidence, I think it has definitely improved. I remember a lot of the time early on, I'd stumble over like my words a lot, which still does happen, but now you can
Yeah,
edit them out. But also,
exactly.
I feel like there's not, because like, it used to be that I'd like mess up once and I'd feel really like down about it. Like I'd mispronounce a word or I'd say the wrong thing and I'd have to end the recording and start over again. Even though I
Yeah.
could have just edited that opening bit out. Nowadays, I'm a lot more chill about that sort of stuff. And yeah, it definitely has helped confidence as well. And I've done some things with the channel and just surrounding it like I never thought I'd have ended up doing. Which yeah, is incredibly cool.
Well, just to wrap up the segment about your channel, because obviously you're now, as of recording, you're well over 20,000 subscribers. Do you have any
Mm.
hopes of what you'd like to do with it in the future in terms of content or collaborations or, yeah, do you have any aspirations where you'd like
Mm.
to take the channel?
It's always difficult because like with the sort of content that like myself and you also do, a lot of it can be incredibly like sort of within the moment type of
Yeah,
thing. So it's always difficult to know like how do you evolve that. I think I want to do more evergreen content where it's like for example like Sonic Screwdriver rankings or like discussions about certain stories or subject matters that aren't necessarily news related so
yeah,
that you have like more of a rewatch value because no one goes back to watch like a leak video from 2021 about how guys Joe Martin's definitely going to be the 14th Doctor.
yeah,
No one's going to go rewatch that, unless it's to laugh at it, I suppose. But because like how naive we all were. But I think that's
yeah.
something that is a focus for me. I want to do some more stuff that's more long lasting. Um, yeah, I think the ultimate thing is I just want to keep having fun with it. I'd love to do some more collaborations. I used to, I for a while there, I had like a couple of, I had a podcast of my own initially. That was one of the first things I did. The creatively named Tharries podcast. Very
Very
creative.
self-aware.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I ended up years ago interviewing like Nick Briggs and like Sophie Aldred and stuff, and that was really fun.
Yeah.
So maybe something like that again would be fun, where I got to interview someone from the show. Don't know whether it'll ever happen. That's not me saying I've been in contact, but just something that I think would be cool to do again. And in terms of just other collaborators, I mean, I love just collaborating with anyone
Yeah.
really. So much of the community is so wonderful. Like one of the first things that like happened post those leak videos is Crispy Pro did his first like Reddit leak video, and I cameoed in that. And there was a whole opening sketch about it that he made with like a Cyberman head and stuff, and that video kind of like also really helped out. But then also it was like there's really funny if you go back and watch that video now. It's like it's got like me, my channel name with like 4,000 subscribers next to it, which is kind of mad in retrospect that it's gone as quick as it has. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think just the community is so wonderful. I honestly collaborate with most other people. If I haven't done something, I'd like to do it basically.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting to hear, your aspirations for the future. And I do share that with you about making stuff with like rewatch value, because especially
Mm,
like, when it's like off season as well, and like, you want to kind of do
yeah.
something a bit unique, something that you can put passion into. And that's kind of why I started this podcast, because I share that passion for the community like you have as well, like
Mm,
where, there's so many cool people to be interacting with. And it's just kind of nice to learn about how other people got into the show
yeah, 100%, 100%.
and yeah, well, let's move on to the next segment,
Hmm.
which, well, actually, no, before we get onto that, just the last little bit about your YouTube channel. Obviously, there could be people watching that might want to start a channel.
Hmm.
Do you have any advice for starting?
Uh, do I have any advice? I think honestly, my biggest piece of advice would be don't worry if you don't have like the best equipment and stuff. I think there's a lot of pressure in the current YouTube climate to sort of already be professional from the offset because there's so much money in the platform now and creators spend so much on videos and maybe not in our niche so much, but like Just the general YouTube trend seems to
Yeah.
be more money you spend, better video.
Mm.
That tends to be sort of the correlation that I think a lot of people draw.
It's
But
a
yeah, my
risky
honest
gamble.
advice, it really is, yeah. But my honest advice would be don't go into it with that mindset of like, right, I need to spend money on the best equipment and on X, Y, and Z. Because, like I say, I started it with literally nothing, pretty much, as rudimentary as it gets. I just carried on. My very first comment was someone complaining about the microphone quality, like the sound quality, because it was done on my phone. But I'm friends with that guy. I've stayed friends with him ever since that. And I think even though you might get the cut of the odd people if you don't have like all the equipment being like, oh, this could be improved, or that's stuff you can iron out. Just
Yeah.
focus on what you enjoy about it first, and the rest will follow. That is what I would say.
Oh, well, that's advice that I'm sure the viewers will deem useful, and hopefully people take that on board because it would be nice to see some new channels cropping up. And hey, you never know,
100%.
we could have the next Mr. Beast version of a Doctor Who YouTuber listening in or something. But okay. The next point I would like to talk about, obviously, you have a big presence on Twitter as well, or
Yeah.
X as we now call it.
Oh dear. Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the Twitter side of the fandom?
Oh, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
end of end of segment. Next question. No. I think I think it's not that much different to the rest of the community. I think the only real difference comes from the fact that I think Twitter as a platform or X, you know what? I'm just going to say Twitter for the sake of convenience. That's just how
yeah,
it is in my head. It's very much a platform that kind of thrives on, for lack of a better term, people getting into arguments. That's kind of
yeah,
what the site was built around. So I think when you transpose that onto Doctor Who fandom, you get a lot of like they call them discourses on
yes,
Doctor Who. They're not arguments; they're discourses. Because it sounds more professional. Even though
yeah,
we're all just moaning about a TV show, really.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think honestly, I think the people themselves are like you meet them in real life and they're like really lovely. I think it's
yeah,
honestly just the platform that kind of can often make it this kind of somewhat hostile, somewhat I guess the word would be tribal kind of
yeah,
vibe. But I mean, there's also, the artists on Twitter are incredible. Obviously, you got Emily belongs, and that's kind of the reason we have Russell T Davis too.
yeah,
So there is with it, with everything. You might say like some things have been a flaw to it, but everything has that like silver lining to it. I think that's the same with anything though. I don't think that's a Doctor Who fandom exclusive thing. You go
Oh
on
no, of
basically
course.
any part of Twitter is like that.
I mean, I've seen
You
Star Wars fans going at it. Let me tell
yeah,
you.
yeah, like
Yeah.
Spider-Man fans as well. Have you seen how
Hmm.
like heated they get in arguments? Like, and I think it's especially the case when you have it something that is so long-lasting and
Yeah.
is so prone to constantly change that inevitably there's going to be some people who prefer X thing to Y thing. There's
Yeah.
going to be people who don't like X thing or X era or X Doctor, but like Y Doctor for this reason or that reason. And none of those are really wrong, but obviously sometimes they clash. But I think I used to be a lot more, I suppose, incendiary. Probably would be the word I use. A bit more like because I think a lot of the time you sort of with being online, you kind of gain a reputation.
Yeah.
Whether you foster it or not, it can
Mm.
kind of just be something that develops around you. I got the sort of reputation, if you like, for being like a big Chibnall, oh no, I think he's bad kind
Oh,
of thing. And
anti-Chibnall, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and don't get me wrong, I have said like things that are critical of him, but
Mm.
you go and actually watch my channel, and very little of it is ever actually to do with that. But I think because that kind of reputation had been kind of sort of stapled onto me, I kind of felt the need to almost lean into it more. It's like, okay, then this is what you think I am. if this is what
Yeah.
people are responding to, I'll do it more. But now I've sort of come to realize, yeah, sometimes it's just worth not bothering. Just
Yeah.
I'll just stay out of it. And I think as well with like the Twitter community, like so many of the conversations just repeat. It feels like being on like a time loop in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like how many times have we heard the oh, when does the Spyfall Master come? Is it before or after Missy? Or
Yeah.
Timeless Child, Phasmin, or any of these things, that they come up pretty much constantly.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I feel that you run out of things to say. And I
Yeah.
think it's okay sometimes to admit I ain't got anything more to say on this anymore. I've said all I can. But that's why I'm really sort of excited for this new era to get some new voices in, because I
Yeah.
feel like we've all been having the same few sort of conversations for like 5 years, and I think everyone's kind of sick of it on
Yeah.
there.
I
So
think
yeah,
as
that's how
well.
I see it.
I think as well it doesn't help when we're on and off season as well, because we're not having
Mm,
new things to talk about. So as you said,
no,
we're in that constant loop. We get Tasman, Timeless Child, David Tennant as the 14th Doctor,
yeah,
and
yeah,
again about the whole master placement thing. And whilst they are very interesting conversations to have, obviously people it depends on their following as well, which factors into it.
mm,
And obviously, you're seeing words on a screen as well. So when you get in certain replies, you might sometimes assume that it's a hostile
yeah, yeah,
response, which does obviously make things a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I am sharing your opinion as well about we're getting new content, getting some new voices, and getting some new things to
yeah,
talk about. Because at the end of the day, if you're hearing the same thing over and over again, it is gonna
yeah.
kind of drive you mad a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the master and the drums, to use a Doctor
Yeah.
Who analogy. It's just the same noise, just repeating over and over. But I don't think anyone does it in bad faith. I think
No, of
it's like what
course.
you say. I think it's a case of when you are in these off seasons, and we're obviously all hopeful that this is going to be the last one,
Yeah, hopefully.
um, for a while at least. Um, like it's always kind of been this way. And the thing is, a lot of people will say, "Oh, when did X fandom, not even just Doctor Who fandom, but like when did so and so fandom become toxic?" The reality is that's always been there.
Yeah.
Fans have always bickered. The only difference is now you see it more because you're online, because
Yeah.
everyone can see what everyone else is saying. I bet
Provide you
you
a
back
better
in the day,
platform.
Doctor Who Appreciation Society in like the 80s, they probably argued just as much. The only difference is it wasn't a public forum, so you didn't see it, you know? Um, so yeah, I think it's honestly just a byproduct of social media. But yeah, as I said, I think the main thing I'm looking forward to is just new conversations,
Yeah.
new voices. But overall, I think life's too short to hold any ill will to someone over like an opinion on a show or on Twitter or whatever it
Yeah,
is. It's
exactly.
just not worth the energy.
No, like 100%. And again, that's why I'm looking forward to, essentially moving on with new content. And yeah, people still have opinions online, but you won't be
Yeah,
repeating the same things over and over again.
yeah,
And it'll probably, yeah, it'll be healthier for everyone. And obviously,
yeah.
with Doctor Who getting a big international boost with Disney, we're going to be having a
Mm,
lot of new people joining the fandom. There'll be a lot of
yes,
people being like asking like, wait, how many doctors are there? And then there'll be
yeah,
people saying, oh, there's 15. And then there'll be another audience saying,
yeah.
well, actually,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
And there's that awkward pause. It's like
yeah,
the deep sigh, and then you have to sit and explain for about 20 minutes. And by that time, they've all left.
yeah, and they're
Um,
like, yeah, I'm a bit intimidated. I'm probably just going to take a
yeah,
step back. Yeah,
yeah. No, exactly. But yeah, that's why I'm really like optimistic for the future. Is just having new things to sort of discuss. There'll still be, you'll still get the old reliables. The timeless child's always going to be there. That
oh yeah,
master's always going to be there. People are going to bring it up, but I just hope that at a certain point we can look at let's focus on other things. You
yeah, of
know,
course,
um, but it's one of those things. I do generally, sounds weird to say, but I have made a lot of like friends through sort of doing this via YouTube and Twitter as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
So
same
I
here.
don't view it as like a wholly negative thing, like I
Mm,
think some people do. But I do understand why people might have that impression. If you look at the fan base from an outside view, like a god's eye view, I can see why it would sort of look like that. But these days, I tend to with Twitter just be a lot more meme based. I
Yeah,
do a lot more meme stuff because because that way, even if your memes are rooted in a sort of critique, it's not that personal. It's meant to
yeah,
sort of be a bit like of a jokey one, if anything. Like there was one I did a while back. There was never ask a man his salary, a woman her age, and a Doctor Who fan their opinion on the Timeless Child. And it's like, yeah, that's true because we all have these completely different opinions on it, and it's one
yeah,
of those things that the fan base is never gonna wholly agree on. But that's what's so great about Doctor Who is that it can, because it's so long and multifaceted, it can be approached from all these different perspectives.
yeah. Of course, of course, and obviously, who knows what the future can bring when it comes to, as you say, discourse and you know new connections as well. To be positive and stuff.
Mm,
Because hey, you never know. You can meet a new group of friends from the fandom attending
exactly.
conventions together. And I've got to say that is probably definitely one of the positives I've learned over the past year. Meeting new people, meeting people
Mm,
that I've known from YouTube and stuff in
yeah,
person.
yeah.
And it has been a treat. But let's rewind a little bit. And you mentioned earlier about leaks, and obviously you've covered a
Mm,
lot of leaks, whether they've been true
yeah.
or false. But out of the ones that you remember that were proven false, which ones do you
Mm.
wish were true?
Oh, it was difficult. I honestly always really like the idea of I think I mentioned it slightly earlier. The whole idea of Series 13 revolving around like Rassilon coming back to Gallifrey to enact his revenge
Yeah,
on the Doctor, following its destruction at the end of Series 12. I always thought that Rassilon just kind of leaving at the end of I think Hellbent it is
yeah,
or beginning of Hellbent, sorry. Beginning of Hellbent where he just leaves like Rassilon wouldn't just leave.
about to
He'll
say,
be off on some asteroid, planning some way back. So I always like the idea of okay, that's going to be like the narrative hook of Series 13 or what would eventually become Flux. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's always been ones about everything being oh, there's going to be a multi-doctor such and such, and every doctor's going to be in it. Obviously, those would be fun, but I don't
yeah,
think I'd trade them for what we're getting now.
yeah,
Um, I think if there's one other one that I think would have been cool, like the whole idea of Dan being I remember the theory about Dan being Donna's husband.
yeah,
Remember that?
yeah. I remember
That
that
would have
one.
that would have been mental. I mean, it wouldn't have happened, and I don't even know how you make it work, but it would have been interesting. I'd
Yeah,
have been I'd have been interested to see what they'd have done with that, if anything at all. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. It's so difficult because I have covered so many. So many just become
yeah. You
like
kind of forget them. Yeah,
all in one kind of big ball. Do you know what I mean? It's like this. I can remember the odd thing here and there. Um, so yeah, I'd probably say Rassilon coming back for Series 13 would be something I'd have liked to have seen.
yeah. Well, I mean, I remember that one because that also tied into the. I think the same person that put that out. There was one about the TARDIS dying, which we did
Yes,
sort of get
we
in
sort of got
Flux.
that. Yeah,
But then the whole visiting ancient Gallifrey, and that's how there's answers
yeah,
about the
that
timeless
would have been
child.
cool.
That would have been cool. It would have definitely been more lore heavy than Series
Yeah,
12, and that probably would have been another diverse series for sure if
yeah.
they went
But
down
I
that route.
mean, Flux kind of was anyway.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
was.
it's might as well. I don't think that's the thing, and I think with the Timeless Child, I think whatever your thoughts are on it, I
Yeah,
think if you're going to commit to it,
you may
I
as
mean, you
well
might
see
as
it
you
through.
might as
Yeah,
well just fully go for it.
yeah,
If you're gonna jump that shark, give us ancient Gallifrey. Why not give us Rassilon? You might as well. You pulled the band-aid off. Now let's just jump into it.
yeah. Let's jump
But
into
they
the
didn't do
wound and see
that.
what happens.
Yeah, they didn't do that. But there we are.
Yeah, instead we've got Sontaran eating a chocolate bar. But
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
the final bit for leaks on the podcast,
Mm.
from what you remember, was there anything really ridiculous that you read and from the offset you were like, no, come on. Like,
Oh, the thing is, there's so many. Uh, I remember one about it was something I think one that I've forgotten was do you remember all those bizarre showrunner leaks? Because for a
Yes,
while we
yeah,
weren't sure who the showrunner was going to be, right? There was like rumors about like Sally Wainwright
yeah,
at one point, which I think Council of Geeks was the first one to really be like, oh, she might be in the running,
yeah,
if I remember correctly. But I remember like there being one about how like I think Chibnall had been fired, and then like I don't know who it said took over. I think Pete McTeague or something
yes,
like that.
yeah,
Um, that one was mental. I personally wouldn't have been a huge fan
yeah,
myself. Not that I hate Pete McTeague or anything, but like I like what he does with the collection box sets, but I'm not
mm,
a huge Praxius or Kablam guy, really.
yeah,
So and I remember even there was this tweet, and I think it was like Doctor Production News or something, put one out, and it was like these doors up to like a BBC department, and they kind of looked like round, like they had like little round inserts in it, and I think Pete McTeague on Twitter made like a Doctor Who reference, and they were like, "Is this a sign he's gonna be the new showrunner?" And yeah, that one was wild. Like the sort of showrunner, like Wild West was quite mad. I remember that. I specifically remember there being one. I feel like I can reveal this now. I don't remember which one it was, but if you go back and watch one of the leak videos, there was one that spelled out via the first line of every sentence, Tharries stop making these videos or something like that. Which, to be fair, I have to commend because it was really funny and I didn't notice it until after the fact. So yeah, one of those two things that was bad.
oh,
And I remember people saying that I was going to be in Doctor Who because it got to a point where I think this is the thing, and this is one of the reasons why I stopped doing them. I think it got to a point where people were just putting stuff on just to get into the videos, which sounds mental, but I think that kind of did happen because I'd be mentioned by name more frequently than I care to admit. When I was looking at these, like, well, that's obviously not true, is
yeah,
it? So yeah, it was a wild
blimey.
time.
I completely forgot about the whole showrunner thing because that was the thing when Chris Chibnall and Jodie left, compared to
Mm,
when Russell left and Moffat, the successors were announced straight away. Like
yeah,
they were announced as part of the leaving announcement.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that's where also like the rumors and stuff about like the show taking a hiatus started up
yeah,
until Russell was announced
yeah, yeah.
quite a few months later,
Yeah,
which
September, I think. They were announced to be leaving in July, and then it
yeah,
was like because it was only just after San Diego Comic Con, which felt really odd in retrospect, having the San Diego Comic Con, the thing where they announced like Vinda and all that, and they had like a little talk about
yeah,
Series 13, and Chibnall said Swarm, and everyone was like, "What does this mean?" Turns out it's just the villain.
yeah,
But like, but and then like 2 days later, it was like breaking news: Jodie and Chris are leaving. It's like, oh, this came out of nowhere.
yeah,
And then like yeah, it was the longest gap between showrunner leaves, as in it's announced to leave, and showrunner joins. So there was a lot of, oh, is the show going to go on hiatus? And to be fair, Chris Chibnall himself did say that like he wasn't aware of Russell until very late in the game, and
yeah,
he sort of wrote Power as like sort of as if it was the last one.
yeah,
I think he said that in like interviews and stuff. So they weren't completely wrong, but luckily that didn't happen.
yeah. I was about to say,
Luckily
yeah,
we
we
have
got
what we
Russell
have.
back, which is
Yeah,
uh,
and I think that's why I'm a lot more because I've seen a lot of people and I've seen a few people make videos on this kind of talk about is there like a lack of hype for the 60th or a lack of content or what have you. And personally, while I do get that frustration and I share it sometimes because fans of anything they want as much content as possible.
yeah,
That's natural, but I think the fact that we're getting this new era in and of itself is kind of a miracle. The fact that we actually have a 60th to look forward to. So I'm thankful just for that fact.
yeah. And of course, like it's mad to think about if David Tennant and Catherine Tate didn't want to do the 60th, we would have had an off year because Shooty
Yeah.
was busy filming Sex Education and Barbie, so we
Hmm.
wouldn't have had any
No,
Doctor Who until next year, which may have done the show more harm than good. Having another
I think
gap
so.
year.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I think because obviously you'd have had the 20, like obviously we've got basically 2 years for specials back to back with the 2022 ones and the 2023 ones, which obviously makes sense why, but for like general public, it's very random release times, isn't it? There was one on New Year's last year, one on Easter, and then one in like October, and then these three are in November. Obviously, we like well, that's what I assume anyway. But obviously, we as fans know why because
Yeah,
of Doctor Who's anniversary and scheduling and whatever. But to a casual audience, it's like, is Doctor Who still on? When's it on? And I think just having that I think having that consistency with series every year, Christmas special, which I think Russell wants to do,
yeah,
possibly like a spin-off as well to bridge the gap, is going to do the show a lot of good. To have that consistency again, I think is really going to help it. And I think that was probably one of the things that really did damage the Chibnall era in retrospect. Because you had Series 11, all this marketing happened, all this
yeah,
hype. First female Doctor, brand new series, brand new showrunner. 2019, nothing.
yeah,
Radio silence pretty much all year. I think that killed the momentum quite hard
yeah.
for the new era. Obviously, I don't know, like perhaps there was a reason why they couldn't do it in 2019. I suppose we'll never know. But yeah, I do think having a yearly release is gonna be a huge help.
Yeah, certainly. Well, from what I remember from, I think it was Gallifrey 1, the
Mm,
convention in LA, Matt Stevens and Chibnall were there, and they were talking
yeah,
about, obviously, you know, now that the era's over, they were talking about why certain things didn't work, why certain storylines like Dasmin didn't happen straight away and
yeah, yeah,
weren't concluded in the way people thought. And one of the things we brought up was actually spin-offs and then the
yeah,
marketing, and it was down to the BBC's budget,
yeah,
which obviously, yeah, seems like a feasible option. Obviously, combined with Chibnall wanting to keep things too secret, but
yeah.
I feel like this kind of leads on to the next segment that I want to ask you about
Mm-hmm.
because we now have the House of Mouse,
We
Disney
do.
are getting involved, and they're
I've actually brought something before you
oh
start the segment. I brought something. I'll bring it up here. I've got the San Diego Comic Con Disney Plus badge. It's on my desk.
oh
There
wow,
you
where did
are.
you get that from?
I put eBay. eBay. It was
eBay.
on
Oh, okay.
eBay. Quite cheap to be fair. And I thought it's gonna be cool to have this just as a bit of history. I think
Yeah.
even if this deal falls through in the end, it's gonna be cool to have something to mark when Doctor Who was under Disney internationally. Like that's mad.
Yeah, it's something that we never thought would happen, and I think there were
No.
jokes about it, and then it happened, and then people are.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a. I feel like it's generally positive, but obviously there
Yeah.
are some negative thoughts, especially with how Marvel and Star Wars as IPs
Mm,
have been, let's be honest, mistreated. Do you have any
yeah, yeah.
concerns with Doctor Who, especially in that department?
I think when it comes to the Disney thing, I think obviously the initial thing was like we were all told was, um, oh, it's going to be like just distribution.
Yeah,
So it's just distribution, and that's about it. Which I saw that and I went, cool. Doctor Who's going to be seen by more people. That's just like no matter how you slice it, pretty much universally a good thing, with the exception of the Australia part of the deal, which obviously means that they were getting it for free. I think I'm probably not the best person to ask for this. They were getting it for free, but then obviously with Disney Plus now they're gonna have to
yeah,
pay. That's probably like one of the negative ends of it. But then they were all obviously talking about them having a seat at the creative table. And I think that's when people got a little bit like more
yeah,
trepidatious. But with that having been said, literally every company in any production, as far as I'm aware, like they're gonna have a say. If it's not Disney, it'll be the BBC. If it's not the BBC, it'll be someone else. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like no show goes out fully just as the writer originally intended because
hmm
budget things happen
yeah,
or censorship things will happen. Like for example, Robot of Sherwood. Do you remember the story of there's a deleted scene of like a robot getting its head chopped off,
yeah,
and they had to cut it because of like I think there would have been like some sort of terrorism going on that week or something, so they had to cut it. Like nothing goes out unedited and
yeah,
as it was originally envisioned. So I don't really have many issues towards that. I know some people are kind of nervous about. I think the only thing I would say, and I think because I watched the Confused Unopposed episode, and I think he kind of echoed this sentiment. The only thing that would worry me is not so much now, but what happens when Russell leaves. Because
Yeah.
Russell is very much. I trust Russell to maintain control of Doctor Who.
Hmm.
Keep Doctor Who as it is. Like I know I've seen some people worry over like physical media releases like DVDs and stuff. I personally don't think that'll be affected.
I mean,
Because
they do sell like hotcakes, especially the
yeah, that's the
collection stuff.
thing. Yeah. Like they make the BBC way too much money for them to just
Yeah.
go, yeah, we'll leave that. Like I just don't see it. But I do understand the worry of because Russell is so in control, and they even said in Doctor Who magazine, oh, to fans who were worried about Disney, what would you say? And I think they just said Russell, Russell, Russell. They said 3 words, Russell, Russell, Russell. It's like that's all good. I trust Russell completely at this point with Doctor Who. He's more than proven himself. I think most people could agree, even if you didn't love his era, like he's been
Yeah.
a good ambassador and a good guy in terms of getting the show in people's faces. I don't think that
Yeah.
can be denied. But I suppose the concern would be who is the successor and how do they deal with Disney? Do Disney get
Yeah.
a bit more? Do Disney, you know, if they get like a younger showrunner, for example, are they going to have a bit more sway over perhaps a more inexperienced
Yeah.
younger showrunner
Because
as
I can
opposed to
imagine the
Russell?
scripts will be edited a little bit more as well, which
Yeah, that's the thing.
yeah.
It's like because with Russell, I could totally imagine if they proposed a change he didn't like, him just going, "No, I'm not
Yeah,
doing that." Because realistically, what's he got to lose? He could have gone anywhere and done any show if he wanted to. He came back on
exactly.
his own terms, and the BBC probably wanted him to. So he can basically say what he wants, but yeah, like I say, the concern would be someone who isn't as experienced, someone who is a little bit more uh, younger and a little bit less sort of strong-willed to be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you can edit this and just. I think the concern is for the next era, not so much this one.
Yeah.
But as far as this era is concerned, I'm not too worried. I am going to be interested to see what it actually looks like when
Yeah.
Doctor Who's on Disney Plus. I'm very curious to see that. Like, I hope that when the 60th comes out, we got like a bunch of Twitter accounts like taking screenshots in America of like Doctor Who's little section. That's going to be mad to see.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to seeing that because I believe in the UK we're not getting on Disney Plus. It's only on
Yeah,
iPlayer and BBC One.
yeah,
But certainly, yeah, it will be very interesting. But obviously, with the increased budget,
yeah.
there is room, and it has practically been confirmed about the existence of spin-offs.
Mm.
How do you feel about spin-offs happening? And would you prefer a limited run of spin-offs similar to what we got before with the Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures, or the potential creation of the Hooniverse, aka the Doctor Who cinematic universe?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. Obviously, I think the two spin-off setup worked really well under RTD1 because it felt like you had stuff going on throughout the year, but it never felt overwhelming.
Yeah,
And you never had to watch all of it. You could just pretty much watch either Doctor Who or Sarah Jane or Torchwood in isolation as their own shows.
yeah,
Like there are people now who I've met in recent years of my life, I suppose, they call K9 the Sarah Jane dog from the Sarah Jane Adventures.
yeah,
They have no wider context of Doctor Who really, but they liked Sarah Jane. And on the same token, you have there's this story about Torchwood airing in Germany before Doctor Who had aired over there. So they watched Torchwood before they watched Doctor Who. So to them, it was just its own thing.
yeah,
And I think as long as they work as that, I think you'll be all right. Because something that really does bother me, especially Marvel is particularly guilty of it. You've got to watch everything to
yeah,
understand what's going on in this like wider narrative, and it does end up kind of feeling like homework. You all sort of sat there like, all right, okay, I'm gonna watch this to get this, and I gotta watch this in this order. I think as long as it doesn't become too intertextual where it's like you have to watch everything to get it,
yeah,
I think it would be fine. Obviously, I don't want the quality to suffer, and I do think the
yeah,
main show should be top gravy, top priority.
yeah,
And I hope that remains the case no matter what spin-offs we get. I do think I don't know whether what good number would be in terms of like a limit of spin-offs, like because like it's not sort of conversation we have particularly frequently. We all think about spin-offs coming back as this like positive thing,
Yeah,
which it is. You know, I think it gets like just as I was saying earlier, like it gets more people into the brand who might not have otherwise, be it through Sarah Jane or Torchwood, sort of
yeah,
being more up their alley. But at the same time, you know, you don't want the show to sort of lose itself within that. So I think oh, I do quite like the setup. Maybe I mean we're probably going to be getting a confidential type thing as well, which people also
yeah,
forget. That's also going to provide quite a bit of content. Maybe I'd probably limit to like 3, 4 spin-offs at like max.
yeah,
But like you know, if we've got the money and we've got the budget, we've got the manpower, and everyone's happy to do it, you know, that I think would have to be the limit because I think when you look back at the Marvel stuff, when that was at its peak, you'd have like
yeah,
3, 4 films a year, and that'd be
yeah,
it. And I think that really kept people sort of in the loop and stuff. And I'd like to see them, you know, be a bit more. I think you could do some more experimental stuff, like do an animated show, for example.
yeah,
I think that'd be fun. And especially like because I think things like What If, the Marvel thing, is like such a good concept
yeah.
that I think Doctor Who could do wonders with. You get the right writers in, I think that could be incredible to
Yeah,
watch.
exactly. Like,
Um,
there's so many alternative scenarios that have already, well, that we've seen so many cool things in the show that we've always wondered, oh, what happened if that played out slightly differently?
yeah,
And Doctor Who, except for the episode Turn Left, it's never really
yeah,
fully explored that. Like, imagine if we
no,
got
100%.
multiple versions of Turn Left, but with different scenarios, it would
Yeah.
certainly be something. But obviously, yeah, Marvel with Phase 4, there was the introduction of the Disney Plus shows, which was again another
Mm,
format. People had to get a subscription, and at one point, Disney Plus wasn't actually in a few selected countries as well. So
yeah.
some people going in to watch Doctor Strange, obviously the whole Wanda and the Scarlet Witch
Yes.
reveal. People who hadn't watched WandaVision would have been confused. Wait, why is
Yeah.
she evil? Like
Yeah.
what? Yeah,
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I think that's something that they avoided very well with RTD1 on the whole, I think.
yeah,
Did you watch something like because I watched Torchwood as a kid, but I
yeah.
knew who Jack was.
Hmm.
You know, like you didn't feel like you missed anything. Obviously, now that I have seen all of Torchwood, I think it adds to him a lot. I think you gain a
Yeah,
lot more from Jack as a character if you see Torchwood as well, because in Doctor Who he's kind of just the fun American guy.
yeah,
In Torchwood, there's a lot more to him. But you never felt as an audience like you were missing out
yeah,
if you didn't catch that one thing. On the same note, you know, that's why I think like things like Sarah Jane was such a smart pick. Because even if like you're an adult who didn't watch Sarah Jane Adventures, you knew her from the classic show.
yeah,
So like there
exactly.
was this kind of thing of like everyone was aware of what they needed to be aware of in order to enjoy the show. And I think that's where Marvel sometimes falters a bit is in not everything's going to appeal to everybody. And the way I've seen them combat that is try and make everything as like similar as possible. Like you watch a Marvel film and you're always going to have like the sort of the quippy characters. You know, like that used to be a more Iron Man, like Iron Man, it made sense, right? But
Yeah,
like nowadays, everyone's quipping. Thor, Star Lord, all of them. They all quip. You know, like
yeah,
there's no tomorrow. But I think that kind of robs it a little bit of its uniqueness. You know, if you're going to do all these different things, give them different tones and
yeah,
give them a different place. And I think that's something that Doctor Who does really well. And I hope that's what they do with these spin-offs. Like if we do get that unit spin-off, which it looks like we're probably gonna, I
yeah,
hope it does feel different to the main show. I hope it does maybe take on a bit of a darker form, you know, a bit
yeah,
more. I always imagined it, you know, because obviously Torchwood is a very early 2000s show. You go back, you watch it, it's very like 2000s,
yeah.
especially series one. I always imagined if they were going to do the unit spin-off, it being more like a police procedural type thing.
Kind of like
Because
Line
that's
of
kind of
Duty.
what's yeah, that's kind of what people are into right now.
Yeah,
And I could definitely see Russell kind of tapping into that sort of market, but with aliens. I think people would really go for that, especially in the UK where we all seem to live and love our cop shows. Apparently, everyone loves a police drama. But yeah, I think just keep them unique and don't make them necessary to enjoy the main show.
Yeah.
Make them their own things, and I think you'll be all right.
Okay, well, one final thing about spin-offs before we move
Mhm.
on to the debate question. Which spin-offs would you like to see in the future?
So it's so hard, isn't it? Because the difficulty is you often want to pitch like, oh, a Doctor spin-off, like it's Paul McGann is coming back,
Yeah,
and it's the Eighth Doctor Adventures. The difficulty with that is, of course, how do you make that different from the show?
yeah,
In and of itself. The one that I've always thought would be cool, and it kind of comes back to a conversation we were having earlier on, would be Tales of Trenzalore, where you get older Matt Smith there just having like the odd threat to face on Trenzalore, because you then have the benefit of, well, he's not got the TARDIS, so he can't go anywhere. So there's that element to it. And there's obviously the fact that we've never really seen the Doctor in a home as such. The
mm,
closest we really get is like the unit sort of base
yeah,
in the Pertwee era. But generally speaking, the Doctor doesn't stay in one place, so that would be an interesting angle to explore. You also have the benefit of, because it's aging Matt Smith, you could literally bring him back at any age, and you
yeah,
could do it, and it would make perfect sense. So if there was one spin-off, and obviously I'm a massive 11th Doctor fan as well, so if there was one spin-off that I would like to see, it would be that. If I was to be more creative, I do think I think an Ace children's spin-off would be really
yeah,
cool, where perhaps she recruited people to be part of a charitable Earth, and that was kind of a front for them to do like little alien activities. I think that'd be really fun. I'm kind of sad actually that in the centenary they never brought up the fact that she was like a CEO, because it sort of felt like they sort of hinted at it because she was in like a suit and that
yeah,
sort of got the vibe that that's what she did now, but they never actually said it. So I'd personally like to see that. I think that would be really fun. I think that would be like very fun, because I can imagine as well they could kind of do the inverse kind of character arc to Sarah Jane, because Sarah Jane was very like, no, I don't want to let anyone into my life. You're just kids and all this. And eventually she warms up to it. I feel like Ace could be a fun contrast to that, where Ace would
yeah,
be like a bit too willing to get them all involved, and a bit too willing to perhaps, obviously not use super violence if we're aiming this more at kids, but
yeah,
he's more willing to, use like a baseball bat occasionally, and her lesson would kind of be, you've got to sort of be reserved sometimes and kind of not be as I guess reckless. I think you could do a nice contrast there. So those would be my two that I would like to see. Plus, I just love Ace.
yeah. To be
I'd like
fair,
to see more of
Ace,
Ace.
I would never complain about Ace returning. I
No.
would love to have more of Ace, definitely. But okay, the big moment is here, the debate question, which, to give
Ooh.
context to people that are tuning in for the first time, this debate question will be marked by yourselves, the audience, and at the end of the podcast's current season, the winner with the most votes will win a £50 Amazon voucher. So, Tharries, imagine
Wow.
all the Doctor Who merch you could get with that.
Wow. That's a
Yeah.
lot. That's
Oh,
wow. The pressure. The pressure's on. I'm feeling the pressure.
the pressure. Well, the pressure will come from this question, and the question is: do you think the Timeless Child story arc should be continued slash addressed in the new era of the show, or should it be ignored? If it were to be continued, how would you like to see it addressed?
Firstly, no. End of end of question. No. No, I probably should answer properly. I don't think it should be. I'll say why I don't think it should be, and then I'll say if I had to, this is how I'd do it.
Okay.
I don't think it should be, because I feel that this era has to try and be this jumping on point for new people. We were talking earlier about new people joining the fandom, especially through like Disney Plus and it all being international now. I feel like bringing up this piece of lore, which already hasn't really had like a resolution as it is, and is already kind of confusing, would only really serve to confuse newcomers more than anything
Yeah.
else. So I probably wouldn't do it for that reason. Additionally, you just got to look at the fact that, I mean, the very fact that you've asked that question, it's a controversial topic.
Yeah,
People
certainly
people
is.
don't
Yeah.
agree on it. So I feel like it'd be a difficult thing to like start an era bringing back up again, because I think some people would sort of see it as like, I don't know, like this kind of sore spot that they might not want to come back from, whilst others might be like, I was happy with the way it ended, because there's some people who just like the way 13 goes. Actually, no, I don't want to deal with it. I suppose if it had to be continued as a storyline, it's so difficult. I mean, there was a rumor a while back about, I don't remember like where this was from. I think it might have been Reddit, but I know a few other people have kind of like filming people have kind of reiterated it. This idea of Ruby being adopted, this idea
Okay.
of like Ruby being an adopted child. I know there was this whole thing about like maybe like her being Kate's kid or whatever. That was something that people speculated really early on, probably just because they're both blonde and they
Yeah.
both have similar short hair, probably. But if that were to be the case, and if you were to have like an adopted companion, I think sort of having them bond over that would be a really cool angle because Chris Chibnall always said that's sort of where the impetus of the idea came from, him sort of being adopted. So I think really sort of capitalizing on that aspect to it and highlighting that, I don't know who my family were either. I think that's a very doctory conversation to have. So that's probably the way I would hook it in. It would be less about, oh, let's go find the division again. And it'd be more just the doctor relating to a companion on like a human level. Because that's what I think Russell does so well. You look back on his era and that's what really stuck people to the revival in the first place was, Chris Eccleston, obviously none of us have fought in a time war, I don't think.
Yeah.
But like we have related to that feeling of loss,
Yeah.
that feeling of, I feel like I've done something terrible and I don't know whether I can come back from it. We can relate to those things. And I think he does that incredibly well. And I think if there was one way I think you could approach the Thomas Child, it would be from that angle. So that's probably how I would do it if I had to. But for me personally, I'd rather they just start fresh, new stories. And if you do bring it up, make it like the half human thing. Just make it like a little joke, little reference, little nudge nudge, wink wink kind of thing.
No, that's a fairly good response to the question. Obviously, I
I
can't
hope
be the
so.
deciding vote. So, audience, let us know. Do you think Tharries nailed that? And we'll find out in a few months' time if you are the winner of
I'm
the
very interested.
£50 voucher. But
I'll bribe everyone. No, I'll be like, I only need £49, and then I'll give £1 to everyone else. No, that's totally messing. Not going to rig the vote.
that would be funny to see, but obviously would require
Yeah,
a lot of effort. But
yes, it would. Yeah,
the next segment is the audience questions. Now, I am mindful on time, and obviously,
that's fine.
I will probably try and shorten this bit for you because I imagine you've been here for over an hour. So
That's all right. No worries. No worries
I'll
at all.
try and get through these as quickly as possible. So
No
I've got a
worries.
few questions from my audience that I'd like to ask you. So from Dr. Watt on Twitter, how do you feel about representation? Oh, sorry. How do you feel representation should be handled in media and particularly in Doctor Who?
Okay, interesting. I seem like this would probably be asked because I've been very outspoken about the Reef Madley stuff.
Yeah,
Obviously, as someone who's disabled as well, that's been a huge sort of thing for me, and really just cool to see. As a kid, I always wanted to see that more in Doctor Who, so it's really cool. In terms of just how I'd want it to be handled, I think honestly, just having them be characters and not having that be the thing that defines them
yeah,
is the fact that, oh my god, we've cast someone in a wheelchair or whatever like that. Like a good example, Ruth Madley again and Russell T Davies again, years and years. The character that she plays in that, whose name escapes me right now, but I'm sure someone in the comments will say, like, that's not really her character. It's part of it, but a lot, like her personality doesn't really stem from that, and it doesn't really stop her being an active participant in the narrative in any real way. It's just a part of her as a person. And I
yeah,
think that's probably how I prefer it to be handled. Because I think otherwise you risk it being quite. It can feel a bit patronizing almost. I feel if you're
yeah,
like, "Hey, look at what we've done! Look at this amazing thing!" It's like, I mean, people are like this. People are in this situation normally every day. It's not that odd. I think 20%. I can only speak from the disabled perspective, of course. Like 20% of the UK has some form of like physical disability, I think. So
yeah.
I think normalization is a huge. I think that's the main priority, I'd say.
Yeah, no, that's again like a fair enough response, and obviously, you're speaking from your perspective as well.
Yeah.
And obviously, with a show like Doctor Who, it's whilst yeah, it's all sci-fi and Monster of the Week, it's also very grounded.
Yes.
Like especially with Russell's writing, he does incorporate a lot of human emotions, and we see a lot of companion families. And I feel like, yeah, if you are going to include like a disabled cast member, and obviously that is going to be visible to the audience. It is
Hmm.
also important to keep in mind that yeah, they are going to be fighting up against I don't know the Slitheen or the Daleks or whoever is
Yeah.
written into the episode. So in a way, like yeah, obviously reference, but also show them
Yeah.
to be like badass because like yeah, you're
Yeah.
not going to be fighting Daleks every week in real life, sadly,
No.
but it's
No.
also shows that you can do good things, and it's again like being able to relate to stuff, like as you
Yeah.
mentioned with the whole adoption thing with the timeless child.
Yeah.
um it's certainly yeah, that's kind of like I guess like a selling point to being invested into a character, and
Yeah.
that's also how
100%.
you get fan favorites as well, I
Yeah.
feel.
Like for example, like I think a lot of people related to like Martha when she left in series three, where you're I mean I have personally experienced it myself, but when you're like deeply in love with someone or deeply feel for someone and they just don't even know you exist.
Yeah,
Like that's something I think a lot of people can probably relate to. You
yeah, I
know?
know.
Yeah, like, and I think stuff like that, and I think that's something that Russell does so wonderfully. And I think what you were saying earlier about make them a badass, I definitely think that'll happen as well. Like Ruth Madsey seems to be. They've said about how she's a core part of like the universe, as they're calling it, and she
Yeah,
seems to be a unit and stuff. So I hope she is, and I think she probably will be, and that's going to be very fun. So yeah, I think honestly, just to kind of wrap it up, it's normalization is the best thing, and things like just in terms of obviously again talking from the disabled perspective, just the fact that they've made the TARDIS fully like wheelchair accessible is like really really fun. I know people will say, well, actually, if you look at it in the classic series, it was always flat. I know, but there was always still you had the police box wasn't always you couldn't
yeah,
always get on that bit. And even though yes, the new series consoriums have often had more stairs or been more complicated, it's still cool to see that the newest one is completely like ramps and friendly and all that. That's still a thing worth celebrating, I think.
and as well, I imagine I know we have seen leaks of the TARDIS interior, but
Mm,
it's going to be the most modern looking one. It's not just going to be
yeah,
completely flat. As you said, there's going to be ramps, and
yeah,
it's all going to be brand new, shiny,
yeah,
and that's the best part of it being included. It's been included now in the new TARDIS. A new
yeah,
era, and yeah, people are going to be watching. So it's
yeah,
certainly a good time to yeah, to make that change, and it's important, and I hope it
100%.
does stay like that. But
I hope so too.
let's move on to the next question. So, from Sarah Glover on YouTube, does he actually like leeks? Yes, I mean the veg.
The vet. Well, a very long time ago, there was a stream where I had to eat. The gimmick of the stream was for like each time I said that like or each time I was reading a leak, I had to eat one or it was something like that. And my mum just got some raw leeks from Sainsbury's. I think it was Sainsbury's or something, and she was like, "Why are you doing this?" And I was like, "I don't know." And they were just literally like these massive, just big leek vegetables just on my desk that I had to like sort of chomp through. They weren't nice. So, in honest answer to your question, no, they were very sort of harsh tasting. I'm not good with vegetables at the best of times, but unfortunately, I don't really like the way leeks taste. Other than if you like, I guess, cook them up and like maybe put them with cheese, they can be
Yeah.
quite nice then, like on crackers and stuff. Other than that, not really. I'm
Yeah.
afraid to say. Yeah, I'm
No,
afraid to say on their own, definitely not.
yeah, no, that's completely fair. I mean, the healthy stuff is never gonna taste the best, but
Yeah, I
imagine
know.
in that sense, yeah, probably not something to
No.
be enjoying. But I'll end this with one more question, again from
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, from the user Torchwood 2020. After Shooty leaves, who are your top choices for the 16th Doctor? which I
It's always
know
so hard,
it's
isn't it?
way early to be speculating, but
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't even want to think about a 16th Doctor. I'm quite happy with where we are now, you know. 16th Doctor, I've got a few choices. I think one of the ones I've always said is Nicholas Hoult, who was recently has been in a comedy for the last few years called The Great, where he plays Emperor Peter. It's got Sacha Dhawan in it as kind of the Empress's advisor as well. And that's I don't know what that's on. I think it's like Lionsgate or something like that.
oh,
It's a
okay.
good show. He's he's got the comedic chops. He also has a slight alienish face to him as well. So I think that would be like one choice. I haven't seen him do as much serious stuff, but I think he could probably carry it off. Um, who else? Oh, it's so difficult. I mean, Michael Sheen's an obvious.
Yeah.
As somebody who's Welsh as well, it's like that would be great. And I mean, obviously, with the whole David Tennant and Michael Sheen sort of rivalry, I think that's even if it was just like in a John Hurt type capacity, as like a one-off thing, I think that would be fun.
Yeah, that
Um,
certainly would be cool.
uh, who else? I mean, it's so difficult. I think a lot of people, when the 14th Doctor was being cast,
Yeah.
a lot of people were saying, what's her name? The one from Years and Years. Forget her name
Oh,
now.
Lydia West.
No, the other one.
Oh,
Can't think of her name. The one who played the general in series 9. When she,
oh,
I can't think of her name now. She was everywhere for a hot minute. Everyone was saying it would be her. I can't remember her name now.
oh, yeah. Because I remember she was also suspected to be the Doctor because she did a cameo
Yes,
video.
yes,
Oh,
yeah.
I
That's gonna
can't
annoy.
for the
That's gonna
life
annoy
of
me.
me.
That's gonna annoy me now. That's really gonna annoy. Hang on, I'm gonna. Who could it be? I don't know. I actually don't. That's someone's gonna scream it in the comments, and I'll be like,
Yeah,
yes, it's that. But her as well.
yeah,
Those three would probably be my three, probably. Um, oh, I can't think of her name now. That's so annoying. I personally was never on the Lydia West train though.
yeah,
Personally, I always saw her as like more of a companion thing, and that's not like a negative towards her because I'd say the same about like Arthur Darvill, for example.
yeah. Of
He has
course.
more of a companion-y vibe. But like, yeah, I think she'd be really good. I can't think of her name. That's gonna annoy me for the rest of the day until I look it up.
Ah, yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, the audience will probably let us know retrospectively. So,
Yes,
but anyway, I have kept you for long enough. But thank you
that's all
so
right.
much for coming on. It's been lovely to hear about, the history of you being a fan, your YouTube channel, your
No worries.
opinions on Twitter, the Hooniverse, and all that cool stuff. So yeah, it's been lovely hearing your opinions. And to
No
you,
problem.
those that are watching, please let us know what did you think of Tharries' debate question? What do you think of the episode? Leave a like, rating, and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you all next time for the next episode. And yeah, goodbye for now.
Bye bye.